Hey guys, welcome to the final Power Rankings episode of the 2022-23 NHL season with the Ice Hockey Aussies. And get us started today is myself with pick 32. Um, Not surprised this team ended up at the bottom of the table for the year. I didn't have that high expectations to start with. They were 32 last week, and that's where they finished the season. The Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, no changes there. Um, can't really make any changes when you don't win a game for the week, so they stay where they finish off, and it's pretty disappointing season. They're in the Bedard race, but yeah, not much more to say. They didn't win a game in the last 10, so there was
Yeah, I was about to
zero eight
say
and
that.
two. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's not great, and not a great season for them. I didn't expect too much more from them. I didn't expect them to be, in a hunt for a wild card spot. I very heavily expected them to be in the bottom five. But to finish bottom of the league is pretty poor. But you know, gives them 25% chance at getting Bedard, so it might be worth it all in
yeah.
all.
I just say on their regards to the finishing 32, I think their trade deadline, what they did in trade deadline, was very lackluster for a team that finished at this position. But yeah, that's all I've got to
Mhm.
say on Anaheim. Uh, Moving on
Sure.
to 31. Another team that doesn't move for me, it's the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, they don't move for me either. They stay in 31. It was hard to move them up.
Yeah, another disappointing season. They got Goudreau off the off season. It was all hype, but since then it's all been decline. They go 2-6-2 in their last 10, and they only win one game this week, 1 out of 3. They with Anaheim, they're only two teams to have over a negative 100 goal differential, and they only win. They don't go in double digits in wins in away games. Only winning 9 away, so they got a lot of issues to work on. They'll probably be down here, not maybe, hopefully not this far down next year, but I can't see them definitely making playoffs or any wild card position next year.
Yeah, not with how the East is. I think it'll be very difficult for them to turn it around that far. But, Werenski's back next year. If they can have a bit of a healthier run, they definitely shouldn't be, finishing this low. I still think they'll struggle, just purely on how strong the Metro and the East as a whole is. Um, but yeah, I definitely think they can have a better season next season with a good off season. Get a couple acquisitions, get Werenski back into that lineup. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be this bad for that much longer because they do have a fair bit of talent to play with.
Yeah,
All right, moving on to P30. Another team not moving anywhere, a team we expected to be down this end of the standings at the start of the year, the Chicago Blackhawks.
oh, okay. It's not going to be like last week where we stuck with each other for a long time. I have them one higher. I think
Oh,
I
yeah.
think they finished the season strong, and yeah,
Yeah, I teetered around it, especially with the form of the team that you've probably dropped lower. Um, it was hard. They both struggled, finished the season not. They finished the season all right, Chicago. Um, the other team that we'll probably talk about soon, I'm assuming that's the team you've got there. Um, they did okay as well in the last 10. So it was a struggle for me to make any real changes on
yeah,
that. But with the way they culled the team at the end of last season around the draft time, getting rid of Dak, getting rid of DeBrincat, getting rid of Kubalik, and pretty much just gutting the hell out of the team and saying we're going full rebuild mode, pissing off Patrick Kane, pissing off Jonathan Tays. We all knew that this was going to happen, right? That it was never going to end any better. Um, and I can't see it getting better next year.
Mm,
I can see them moving down in the power rankings come next year.
yeah.
So
No, I do
it'll be
think I
interesting.
do think they finished the season strong. They were playing better, just overall since some of the big movements after the trade deadline. The last week they outplayed Wild, even though they lost 4-2 on the back-to-back. They beat Pittsburgh, and then they took it to Philadelphia and lost in OT. So I think they were pretty strong in the last month, I'd say. Though it was a little
Mhm.
bit of a roller coaster, but they were definitely playing a lot stronger. So I had to move them up. Uh,
Oh, that's fair.
Moving on to 30, then for me, it is the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, I figured that's where you're going. I almost teeted moving San Jose to 31. I was playing around with all three of those teams. Anaheim were pretty much locked in at 32. But yeah, I was definitely teetering with the Sharks, Blackhawks, and Blue Jackets at one point. I just
Hmm.
settled on what I saw last week. So
Well, Sharks
yeah,
did have a better last 10 than Chicago, 3-6-1 to 2-7-1, but they lost their last
yeah,
five. Their last three games were harder, with Winnipeg, Calgary, and then on a back-to-back, Edmonton. But I don't feel like they showed up really in any of those games. And I feel like that's just staple of what San Jose is. And yeah, I just felt like in the last probably 2 weeks, Chicago just started to edge and say they were playing a little bit better hockey. And I probably prefer the Blackhawks style of hockey to the Sharks in how they were playing. So that's why I've done what I've done there.
sure, I can definitely see it. And yeah, look, honestly, if I'm honest about both of these teams, I think they could potentially be the 32 and 31 of next year.
Mm.
I don't see it getting any better for either the Sharks or the Blackhawks anytime soon.
Well, whoever
Um,
gets Bedard theoretically should take themselves out of the 32 race, but on the
yes,
rosters
you
they're
would
on
assume.
right now, I would probably say Anaheim, Blackhawks, and Sharks are your bottom three next year.
Mhm.
Alright.
Yeah, I think it depending on acquisitions, the Anaheim Ducks with Bedard added to it could do a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't see the Sharks or Blackhawks improving greatly next year. I think the Sharks still need to gut the hell out of their team, and until they do that, they won't be on on the increase anytime soon.
Alrighty. 28 for you.
All right, moving on to the 28. A team I was, expected to be around this position at the start of the year, but I was stupidly impressed with their season. Uh, I'm I'm extremely hopeful with these guys and their rebuild and everything that's going on. I've got the Arizona Coyotes
Alrighty. I'll
also
have them at
announced.
27.
Mm, yeah, I think it was just the way they finished the season. They were still competitive, but they just didn't. They won one game in their last 10, so I just slipped them a little bit. Um, but yeah, announced that they're going to be the team coming to Australia. So um, yeah, that's going to be a cool venture for them,
Mm.
along with the LA Kings.
Long flight.
But yeah, long flight. Yeah, long flight. That's for sure. Can tell you right now that there's an absolute insane amount of Australian hockey fans super keen for these guys to come down. Um, Honestly, any NHL team could have been coming to
Oh
Australia,
yeah.
and I think every NHL fan in Australia would have been frothing at the mouth as soon as they heard that there was going to be a game. They were like, "I don't care who's playing, we're going." Um, I know we'll be going, so yeah, it's going to be exciting. But yeah, overall, I think Arizona had a year we probably expected in terms of where they finished. Probably finished a little bit higher actually than we thought. Um, but overall, the way they played and the effort that we saw most nights from them was phenomenal. I thought they had a really positive season.
Mm. They got really good goaltending in Vamelka. That stole a few games. No, they got a good squad. They got good little system that they play that works to their advantage. With regards to not having that skill, they did go 172 in their last 10, which is besides Anaheim was the worst last 10 in the league. But I still love the way they played in those some of those games the last 10. Like they still took a point from Vancouver, going to OT. The big downside, like they were over 500 at home, 21, 15, and 5, but they only won 7 games away, going 7,
So
25, and 9. So that is where they need to improve is their away. I'm not too sure if it's how their management is dealing with that, but for some reason they can't win away, and it's the worst in the league. So that's where they got to address. And obviously they're still trying to work out their new home. Um, in regards to their stadium and all the lawsuits and whatnot going on there. So maybe they don't want to do that because they're doing good where they are now. But yeah.
yeah, I mean, I definitely think that they would love the new stadium and getting all the extra fans in and all the rest of that
Mm,
mumbo jumbo. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens with yeah, with the lawsuits.
alrighty.
Hopefully they get it sorted.
Yeah, no.
That's all I can say.
Hopefully it all gets sorted. But big money, corruption, blah blah blah. Alrighty. 28 for me. I have team not moving. It's the Montreal Canadiens. They had a little bit better of a last 10 than the Arizona Coyotes, but the last week they did take the game to Boston a bit, but it is arresting
Alright.
Boston, and that was pretty much the only highlight for their week. They lost both games. That Boston game was on a back-to-back from the Islanders game, but they lose both,
Yeah.
and yeah, like I don't know. There's not much really to say about that week because Boston really has just been resting all their squad.
Yeah, I still looked at it as a positive for Montreal. I thought, being on a back to back, being because you got to remember they didn't have a huge amount to play for either. They could have just stepped into that game, gotten absolutely smacked. No one cares. Um, so yeah, look, it was quite a positive outcome for them to play so well as they did, especially against like such a strong side. I get Boston obviously you know, not at their best. They resting players getting ready for the playoffs, but I was still ultra impressed with the effort that they came out with, which is why I sort of pushed them up a spot in the rankings.
So you push them over a team that got a point, and they didn't get a point. How harsh! But yes, nah, that's definitely fair. Alrighty,
Yeah.
you're
All right,
26.
so moving on to my 26, team just not moving anywhere, and I don't think they'll be moving anywhere anytime soon with the age of this roster, the Washington Capitals.
Ooh, okay. Where do I have them? I have them at one higher at 25. The Washington
I'm
Capitals.
wondering who slipped down. I think I might know who you've slipped down, but yeah, I just don't think that the Washington Capitals have had a fantastic finish to the year. They take a point from the Devils. They get a win against the Islanders, which was pretty good. Um, but my God, were they just? I know they had a lot of injuries this year and a few other things, but they were a bit disappointing towards the end there.
Mm,
Just
mm.
yeah,
Nah,
didn't
very
know
very
really what to make.
disappointing. And there's not much that you'd enjoy watching there. You're just watching Ovechkin try to get his goal thing at this point, but you're kind of throwing away the now and kind of the future for it. So is it worth it? Is it not? I guess it is, but
Well,
yeah, that's the debate you got to have as a Washington fan. But they start ended the season good, beating New York Islanders, losing to Boston, which you expect on the back to back. Then they took it to New Jersey and they lose in OT. So they get 3 out of 6, a good ending. I feel like they've just been playing a little bit better than the team that's below, even though they got a worse last 10. They only went 2-6-2 in their last 10. But with that said, they're only -10 in goal differential. They finished the season at
Mm.
25th in standing, but -10 in goal differential. The next best with that is Ottawa at 21. So the next 3-4 teams in between them are got worse goal differential than them, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, definitely an interesting stat to finish with -10 and be so low.
Mm.
Um,
We're sandwich in between -39 and -55. Like that's where they're at.
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah, and I guess it shows that they are still a capable side. Um, the issue I've got with them is it's just an aging roster. They're not getting any younger. Ovechkin's another year older. You pointed it out perfectly. Basically, the only thing Washington Capitals are going to have to look forward to is Ovechkin breaking the record. Because, Ovechkin's 37, Backstrom 35, Oshie's 36, Carlson's 33, even Kuznetsov's 30. Um, they're not getting younger, right? Like it's not and all of these guys I just mentioned have expensive contracts for at least another 3 years. So
Hmm.
I I just named five players and they've all got minimum 3 years on their contract. Well, sorry, 2 years after this year, and they're all mid 30s.
Yeah, and I don't think you can do it in this today age. It's become a very fast paced move the puck, skate with the puck type era. It's not as physical as it used to be. So it's harder to age in this day and age in this game and still stay that relative. Um,
Yeah.
so that's my big
Well,
worry for them as well.
I think you've got to have the balance, right? Like you've got to have aging players mixed in with young, quick talent. So like you you put a bigger bodied, older guy, like veteran type, on a line with a couple of fast players, but they don't really have that. They don't have those players.
Mm.
Um, they picked up Rasmus Sandin in their defense, 23 years old, but other than that, the rest of it's not exactly anything spectacular. Yeah, I'm definitely worried for these guys. I think that it's pretty much over,
Mm.
unfortunately
I think
for
end
Capitals
end of an
fans.
era.
Yeah, end of an era. You're gonna just basically wait for Ovechkin to get the all-time goals record, and then it's gonna be a long, probably next 5 years until you become relevant again.
Alrighty, moving on to 26. I have the just making sure it is the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, it had to be. If it wasn't, I was gonna be questioning it. But yeah, they're just one up for me. I was like, if you've dropped Philly to 26, I'm gonna question because Philly played pretty well.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
Detroit. I think like they lose their last four, the last 10's 4-5-1. They finish above Washington just on regulation wins. However, -39 in goal differential. They've basically been a deadbeat team since losing those two games against Ottawa and deciding to become sellers. And since then, they've
mm,
just tanked like no tomorrow. Things look bright for next year onwards. So that's the good thing. They end low and the future looks good. So best chances in the draft pick, but they're going to look good next year, I think. But they just haven't not looked good at all since like the trade deadline. They've looked pretty horrendous, and they finish off the season not winning a game. They get blanketed by Tampa. They lose to Carolina, and they on a back-to-back from Dallas. All games they got destroyed in. Granted, these are all teams that are top 10 teams, but they only score two goals and they concede was it 15. So yeah, it just shows where they're at.
Oh yeah, exactly. And yeah, that was one of the reasons why I dropped them a position as well. Was yeah, they don't get me wrong, they had three difficult games. Like you're coming up against Dallas, um, then they've got Carolina on a back to back, and they've got Tampa Bay. That's three pretty tough teams, but they didn't like they weren't in any of those games, and it's like. You've scored 2 goals in 3 games to finish your season and conceded what 15?
Mm,
It's not the way you want to end your season. I
nah.
agree with you. I think that if Yzerman can have an off season, bring in a couple of new players, um, either through trades or free agency, they're definitely got a reasonable core there to build something. He's just got to add a few extra pieces. Get a
Mm,
better year from Huso as well, who wasn't terrible this year, but I think with better defensemen in front of him, could be a bit stronger as well. And yeah, look, they still fall in what 5% chance of getting the number one draft pick. So yeah, it's not all doom and gloom, is it? Right? Like
well,
they
now
realize
all
they
these
can
teams
rebuild
down here are
ready.
getting a good pick no matter what. In this
Mm,
draft, it's obviously just the probably the top three or so are just that much better than the rest, but
yeah,
you're still going to get quality, most likely an NHL player. Whether they're NHL ready or not is the question. But yeah, I think they're going to get a good draft pick. It's just going to add to what they've already got. Um, and yeah, like whether they flick that switch really quickly and not do exactly what New Jersey did, because I think that's what Buffalo will be next year. Um, but I feel like they're going to really just flick the switch and maybe replace a team like Florida or something, just or Boston because of just how they've gone all out for this season. So yeah, it'll be very interesting how they go next year.
yeah, I'll definitely be watching their off season. With intent, that's for sure. All right, let's move on to 24. Hey, and the team I mentioned just before, the Philadelphia Flyers, who finished off reasonably strong.
Yeah, that's where I've got them too. And you're not wrong; they did finish pretty strong. I was pretty impressed with how they played probably over the last few weeks, and
Hmm.
they took it to Boston. Credit to them. Then they beat Columbus in OT and then beat Chicago in OT as well. So granted, both games on bottom end teams they go to OT, but they also took it to Boston. Granted,
Yeah,
granted a resting
the
Boston,
Boston.
but yes.
Yeah, but still, like it's still one of those things that they played well
Mm,
against Boston, and even Boston resting their like players or not going as hard, it's still a tough Boston, right? Um, and this was still a Boston that wanted to break the record at the
mm,
end of the day. So, yeah, I still think it was a very good showing by Philly. They got the job done against the two teams that you'd expect them to get the job done against. So yeah, for me, they finished the year strong. What I worry about with them is this is probably where they're going to be next year and probably the year after.
mm,
Um, I just don't see how they turn this side around,
yeah.
unless they call a full rebuild,
That era
which they
of
haven't really
qualifying
done.
for playoffs and not qualifying for playoffs each year, then just keep rotating that has kind of ended, hasn't it? They've kind of
Yeah, I can't see if any team was going to do it. I, it's obviously this team. They've shown it how up and down they can be, but I just can't see it. They've already announced that they're probably going to look at shipping a couple of players off as well.
mm,
In the off season. So yeah, I think what I'm hoping for from a Philadelphia side of things, if you're a fan of Philly, is that they announce a rebuild and they do cut the just bejeebus out of this team and start from scratch basically and rebuild up. It's what they need. It's what they've needed for so long. However, from a New Jersey Devils fan standpoint, continue doing what you're doing and be nothing forever. That is is fine by us.
yeah.
But
I
nah, like yeah,
I would say the disappointing thing is they're missing their this year's and next year's second round pick. They've only
Mhm.
got an extra third and a fourth and a sixth this year, which ain't great. Maybe only the third plays into something. They have I believe, a conditional first round for 2024 from Florida. So they're not stacked on draft picks either. So it could be a long rebuild.
Yeah, for sure.
Alrighty,
For
23 for
sure.
me, where they finish the season. I have a team moving down, St. Louis Blues.
Ooh, St. Louis Blues. Yeah, I reckon that's where I've got them. Just yeah, yeah, I've got St. Louis right there as well.
Yeah, they
Moving
last
on.
week they faced Dallas twice on a back to back, and they lose both games. Granted, they go 0-1 in the second game, and I'd love to do the interesting stat or see when the last time a team went 0-1 this season, because I don't remember seeing that scoreline for a long time now. And so they took it to them on the back to back, but it's a Dallas that's already qualified and whatnot. I think they've been playing better since the trade deadline, but they really have just plateaued around this 23 to 20 mark, 25, basically in this area, and they just haven't been very consistent.
No, no, it's probably a very disappointing season from a St. Louis perspective. Doesn't surprise me that they missed playoffs. I wasn't sitting here thinking they were a shoe-in for a playoff spot, but yeah, I didn't expect to basically get to the deadline day and be like, yeah, St. Louis can't make playoffs. Um, I expected them to at least still be in the hunt. Um, so yeah, it's a little bit of a disappointing season from them, but I'm still pretty hopeful with the moves they made, getting rid of Tarasenko, getting rid of O'Reilly, getting some pieces in place for that, and the pieces that they've already got. I do think they can do a retool as long as they can pick up some pieces in the off season. They've got to get some. They've got to go to free agency. They've got to either trade some assets out, some draft picks or whatever it is out, because I don't think these guys are wanting a full rebuild. Right, like they need to essentially use some of the draft capital they've got, and get in a couple of players that are going to help them now and next year, and then go to free agency and just because I don't think they're huge. I don't think they need a huge amount. I just think they need probably three or so pieces, and they can be right back in the playoff hunt.
Yep. Alrighty. Next one.
All right, at number 22, I have moving up a spot, just swapping over with the St. Louis Blues. I've got the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, so I've done the same thing, finishing at 22.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, what do you say about their season? They finished off probably as one of the strongest teams in the competition. But too little, too late for Vancouver. Um, they just they were ordinary for such a long time, and they turn it on right at the end of the season. And you sit there and go, well, if you were playing like that at the start, you probably you probably would have been in a position to potentially fight for a playoff spot.
Mm, yeah,
So
like we had a discussion, like who was the most disappointing team, do you think, in regards to this season? And after or discussing it, I'd probably have to say Vancouver, just for how it's all started with the horrible start to the season, fans throwing jerseys on the ice, all the controversy that was happening, then how they treated their coach, firing their coach. Like, I think it was like they've done a lot of franchise damaging things this year, and
yeah,
I don't think they've taken the right steps to make their team better. Like they moved Bo Horvat. I don't feel like that was the piece. Like I know they had to make moves, but I don't feel like that's the piece that had to be moved. Um, but that core obviously wasn't getting it done together. And look, I'm not sold on what they're going to do in the future, just especially how they treated their coach and the staff. And and how the fans reacted. Obviously, it's a passionate fan base, but yeah, it's a like they end it strong, but honestly, it momentum doesn't carry to next season. It's pretty much a clean blanket. So I'm interested to see what they do in the off season to make themselves better.
Yeah, they're gonna need to make some moves, right? Like they've started off all right, but in terms of draft capital, really, what have they got? They've got their first round this year. They've got no second round. They got a couple of thirds and a couple of fourths. But next year they've got their first and don't have a second. They don't have a bucket load of picks in the early rounds, right? They don't have a lot of first rounds. They've only really got their own. They've got no second rounds other than 2025. So it's not like they've got a shit ton of draft capital that's going to help them either draft like good players or turn that into NHL ready players now in trades. They don't have it. And I look at their players and I'm going, other than trading out players like Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, who are literally the players you want to build your franchise around because they're 23 and 24, who else do they have that's going to fetch you a ridiculous amount? Because you're not going to get stupid amounts for JT Miller.
Hmm.
Oh, that contract, 30 years old, signed was a 8-year contract or something, 7-year contract for the $8 million. Like, eh, no one's going to sit there and go, yeah, we'll give you our, 2 first round picks, a couple of our good prospects for that. Like, I reckon they'd struggle to move him
Hmm.
because they can't retain his salary. And I don't see too many people jumping on taking JT Miller on.
Yeah, like
So
it was doing some really good flashes this year, showing that he was worth the contract, but ultimately I'd say he's probably like a $6 million player. Um,
mm,
the thing I'd be interested in is the Quinn Hughes department. He's signed on for 5 years, well, 4 years from next year. You just watched your young brother just score his first goal for New Jersey, possibly going to play in the playoffs with his brother. Like he's on the opposite time zone in Vancouver compared to his brothers, uh,
mm.
away from his family. Would you be like, you know what, I want to move? Like maybe not this year, but maybe if they have another bad year next year, just be like, nah, I want to play with my brothers. Get me to New Jersey because I could see that happening because I'd
Yeah,
if I was him, I'd feel a bit left out seeing my brothers having the reactions when Luke had that goal and just seeing how they celebrated and having that fun moment and just like I'm not a part of that. That would probably kill me inside a bit. So yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. I think the toughest part about that's going to be, and like, what are Vancouver gonna expect for a Quinn Hughes? Because he is a fantastic player, and are New Jersey going to have what they expect? I think they're the two biggest question marks for me. Is I'm not sure the Devils are going to have enough
No,
uh,
I'd say there'd
to
probably
get
have to
that
be
done.
some Dougie Hamilton type trade, like some huge trade like that.
Well,
Of it.
that's what I mean, and
Mm,
and then given what Dougie's done this year for the Devils, do they
mm,
sacrifice someone like Dougie
exactly.
Hamilton
Yeah.
to get a Quinn Hughes? Because that's a massive trade, and that could burn you hard,
Mm.
right? Because there's no guarantee that Quinn's going to step into this lineup and be phenomenal.
No,
Um,
he's still pretty good and he's young. That's the other thing. Whereas Dougie's on
oh
the
yeah,
other
100%.
other other end of things. But
I do,
that's the only type of
yeah.
trade of star for star type trade. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's and I'm the same. And the difference is for me, Dougie's I know he can be slow at times and all the rest of it, but he's got a massive reach on him, and that reach has done him stupidly well at times. So I don't know. I'm very skeptical that that sort of trade's ever going to
mm,
happen. But we
especially
might
when
see it.
Vancouver
Who
have
knows?
cap troubles all the time, and that would be an extra 1.2
But
mil. Moving on to
exactly.
P21, I have the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, not moving for me either. I've got them at 21.
Yeah, they ended the season 4-3-3. Look, they were looking pretty good. They beat Carolina by a goal, then they OT lose to Buffalo. Um, and that was their week. So 3 out of 4 points. They were playing strong, but it's just honestly too hard to move them with other teams what they were doing ahead. And that's kind of where Ottawa's been. That's when they do turn it on. The other teams have turned it on, and they just didn't turn it on enough this season. They do have the defender they wanted, in Chikrin, and so they'll have him for a full season next season. So you got that to look forward to, but with the whole selling the franchise and who's going to buy it and whatnot, and if they make any changes, you've got all that to look forward to or not look forward to as an Ottawa fan. So it's going to be a very interesting off season for some of these Canadian teams. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I look, I liked what I saw from Ottawa. I thought, one of the biggest issues they had was their defense and their goaltending. They brought in Chikrin, which was great. Now I think they just need a defensive defenseman. Get a defensive defenseman in, and perhaps shore up that goaltending situation. And these guys could 100% take a top three spot in the Atlantic next year. They're good enough to do it. They just probably lack a piece or two. Very similar
hmm
to the Devils this year.
I think for some people that might sound far fetched, but I think that's pretty much on the money. They really are only that one or two pieces away from
Mm,
being as strong as a Toronto, Tampa, etc. type team. If
100%. Like
so, yeah.
you watch how well they played in some of these games. They were phenomenal, and it just came down to stupid mistakes they were making. And it's just like, okay, so they're lacking a bit on their blue line. Address that. They've got a shit ton of firepower, which is fantastic. And then maybe just shore up that goaltending situation, which was exactly what we saw with New Jersey last year, was they had a shit ton of firepower. They had the talent there, but they were lapsing on the blue line, and their goaltending situation was not fantastic. What did they do? They went out and they had picked Graves up the season before. They picked up Marino. They added Siegenthaler as well. They added to their blue line. They got these defensive defensemen in, and then they went and got a goaltender,
hmm
and boom, they finished third in the league. I can see a similar storyline to Ottawa. Maybe not finishing third in the league, sort of thing, but I can definitely see them as long as they get the pieces. If they don't get the pieces, they'll struggle again next year because they'll have the exact same problems. But if they can get the pieces they require, they can 100% be a top three in the Atlantic.
Mm. No, I understand that. I agree. That's my same thoughts with Buffalo as well. Which is
Yeah.
scary to think that hey, the East is going to get even better next year type talk. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Who falls off? That's the
mm,
crazy thing, right?
well, mm,
All right.
yeah,
Yeah.
20.
All right. Let's move on to 20. All right, at 20, I have staying where they were last week, the Calgary Flames. And you disappointed me, Calgary. You disappointed me.
I'll go them a bit higher at 18. Boom, there we
Oh,
go. A
oh, they
little, a
they
little bit
moved
higher.
up one.
Yeah,
Nah, I'm just salty
it
with them.
wasn't on them though.
I'm yeah, I'm salty with them, I'm telling you. Like, seriously, mate. It was in your hands and you lose to Chicago. And what do Calgary and Pittsburgh have in common? Chicago bent them both over and fucked their playoffs. But yeah, like you lose to Chicago, you lose to Vancouver, and playoffs. Good night. It just yeah. I'm sorry, Calgary. That's on you.
Yeah,
Calgary fans, you deserve better. Um,
they ended the season strong, like the last week anyway. The two games, they shootout lost to Nashville, but they put up 44 shots to 29, and then they go and beat San Jose 49 shots to 24. So heavily outshooting their opponents. They were playing good hockey, but like you said, just too little, too late. When you choke, just the week prior. So that's why I've got them moving. They move up one. It's not really based on them though. It's just other teams. So yeah, it is kind of where they've been in this 20 to just outside the top 16 mark for quite a long time,
All year,
and
basically.
it's kind of fitting that they don't make it because it's kind of been where they're at.
Yeah, 100%. They didn't have a good season. They were always a 500 team, win two, lose two, win one, lose one. It wasn't their season. But yeah, it's kind of disappointing when, yes, basically your playoff hopes are in your own hands and you're coming up against a team like Chicago and you lose. Like they beat
Hmm.
Chicago, they finished level on points with Winnipeg, meaning they just had to get an extra point out of either Vancouver or Nashville right at the end, and they make playoffs. But they lost to Chicago, and it killed them. So yeah, look, just yeah,
Yeah,
poor
no,
form. It's on them.
one of those seasons for Calgary. Yeah, I guess you
Yep.
just write it off and look for next year. That's what you got to do.
I tell you what, after signing Huberdeau to an 8-year contract at what they did, they would really hope that he's going to turn it around next year
Mm.
because he was not great.
Well, yeah, exactly. He needs that bark up
Me,
next to him.
yeah. Meanwhile, Kachuk got what 100 and something points. Ridiculous effort for Florida, and guess what? He's playing playoffs.
Mm.
So yeah, at this point, advantage Florida.
Alrighty, on to 20 for me. I have Pittsburgh Penguins falling off a cliff. Um,
Yeah, you're not wrong there. Um, eh, the
just
other team that you can say shat the bed.
Yeah, another team that choked, and a team that probably didn't deserve it in the end with how they were playing the middle to the end of the season. Probably one of my most disappointing teams just for how strong they were early on and what they look like they could be doing. But look, they've like a lot of Pittsburgh fans were actually glad they didn't make it and went, "Yay, this means we're going to get rid of Hextall," and they got rid of Hextall and a couple of the other like operation managers and whatnot. So they're doing a little reshuffling up in the top ends. It'll be interesting to see who they end up replacing that with because they've just got interim at the moment. I'd love to see. Always forget his name recently, but the Vancouver coach they got.
Auto.
Yeah, I'd love to see him come in. I think that would be a good story. I think he would fit the team well as well, and he could bring it them back into playoffs. But definitely disappointing. They ruined their long playoff streak. They had a horrible way to choke it, losing to Chicago and OT lose to Columbus as well this week. Looks like just Chicago's just loving life. and
Well, I look.
mm,
I called it. I called it right.
mm,
In our video when we broke down the wild card race, I said it when we spoke about them, we said they're eh, they've got to be the favorite to make playoffs given their run home, right? Um Minnesota, Detroit, Chicago, Columbus. You look at that and you go compared to what the Islanders and Florida had, you've got to go, they should win. They should make it. And I said in the thing, I said, the way Pittsburgh have played this year, I can 100% see they beat Minnesota, they beat Detroit. They're the two harder games. And then they choke and lose to Chicago and Columbus and miss out on playoffs because that's just how their season's been. They've been phenomenal at times, looking like a true Stanley Cup contender, and then they've just gone to this team that looks like they're sitting 32nd in the standings. And it's exactly what happened. They played super well against Minnesota, got the job done against Detroit, and then shat the bed against Chicago and Columbus, two teams that they should have had hands down the W against.
mm.
And yeah, it just didn't happen. It's so bad.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. There's really not too much more to say on that. Just they were played really good at home, but
Mhm.
they were just slightly under 500 away, and maybe that's where it was lacking. Is just they weren't playing good away. But Yeah, they pretty much went 500 for quite a long time. Middle of the season. That's really what
Yeah,
cost them. But
yeah,
moving
just
on.
disappointing.
Yeah, very
All
disappointing.
right, moving on to 18 for myself. I have a team that's actually in the playoffs, guys. Didn't make the top 16, but they're in the playoffs. And I wouldn't be like, I could see them losing in first round, but I could also see them going on a run because it's just the team to do it. It's the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, that's my 19. That's fill in the hole.
Yeah,
And
it's crazy. It's crazy that they're so far down, but playing. They've
mm,
been playing like a non-playoff team, right? Like they've not been, and I get it. Like they've known that they're playing Toronto for forever now, and they probably have taken their foot off the gas a little bit, but we can only rate off of what we're seeing, and what we're seeing at the moment is not great.
mm. Yeah, like this week they had two games. They faced Toronto. They doubled their shots, but they lose by a goal. And Toronto was on a back-to-back from a Florida game. So I think they even lose a psychological battle with Toronto in beating them just before the playoffs. Like if they went out and went, all right, we flick it on now. Let's 6-0 them. I think they would have played a huge role into the playoffs.
Hmm.
But they couldn't. They doubled their shots. They couldn't even get the win. But then they do 5-0 Detroit. But honestly, so what? It's Detroit, and you should be winning, especially if you want to be in the playoffs. I think it's interesting. I don't think a team's won the cup uh, being below 500 in the run up to it for like 20 years or something like that. Like I know at least the past like since like 2008 maybe 16 years or something like that. A team hasn't been below 500 and then won the cup from
Yeah.
memory. So I don't
And
like
you're,
with that stat. Do they break that stat or are they just going to bow
I
out in the
mean,
first round? I think they bow out in the first round. I think this is Toronto's year.
yeah, I'm with you. They're also the only team in the playoffs that is below 500 in their last 10.
Mm,
Um, yeah, look, Tampa Bay can do anything, right? The last three seasons have proven that. They've been so strong for greater than that, um, in fact, as well. But yeah, look, I just look at it and go, three straight years of Stanley Cup berths, winning two cups, losing last year, obviously. I think it's time for them to have a slip up. And given the form they've had running into the playoffs, given everything that's going on with Toronto and Toronto desperately needing this first round win, I think it is. I'm with you on that. I think it's the year that Toronto break that, you know, that curse.
mm.
And yeah, I'm expecting Tampa Bay to first round exit and Toronto to finally have that monkey off their back.
Yeah. Well, 9 times out of 10, Vasilevsky plays better in the playoffs than he does in the season. Um,
Hmm.
so you've got that on your back, though. You got a goaltender you can basically sit on. So hopefully they can do that this year as well. Like we spoke about before, that there's not many teams that you can actually say about that going into the playoffs. Some
Hmm.
teams their goaltending is very questionable. So, but Colorado won it last year with questionable goaltending. So it doesn't always stay true that you need to win it with a good goaltender.
Oh, exactly.
All right, moving on to 17, just outside the playoffs, I have a team. Love this team. It's the Nashville Predators. Even though they got a coach I kind of despise because how he handled New Jersey and John Hines. Uh, love what this team did. Sellers at the trade deadline, new general manager um, coming in, and they almost make the playoffs, even though they were sellers. Makes you wonder should they have been sellers, but they probably wouldn't have gone far in the playoffs anyway. Um, but yeah, not a star trade deadline. They played all the way to the end, so they kept the fans enjoying it. They had a good last week in regards to winning 2 out of 3 against hard teams. Calgary shootout win, Minnesota OT win, and then on a back-to-back, losing by a goal to Colorado. So a very hard last week as well, and they did good. So honestly, all positives for this team. John Hines on the chopping block essentially of just are you on regards to trial outs, is he going to be the coach or not? He's
Mhm.
probably qualified with the way they've finished the season, but yeah, we'll wait to see for next year.
Yeah, for sure. The way they finish probably helps him, especially after being sellers. I, you made the statement, should they have been sellers given the way they finished? I still think they should have. I liked what they did. Um, I think they've probably, if they weren't sellers, I think they finish in pretty much a similar spot, and they don't have all the assets that they've got, and they lose the potential UFAs that they did trade out in the end. So yeah, for me, I think they did everything right, and their confidence would be sky high right now, especially
Mm,
for some of their younger players. I think they're quite similar to St. Louis in a sense that if they use the assets they've gained well, they could be relevant as soon as next season. Um, they need a few pieces, and obviously their GM's got to make some moves, but it's there for them if they take it.
yeah, well, the thing I like about them is they have a bit more cap space than some of the other teams. Just trying to have a look at their team in general, but what they picked up in the picks, they're going to have amazing draft this year. Probably find at least one, maybe two NHL ready players, possibly with the amount of depth of picks they've got, and that could spark something pretty dramatic. That's what I like that they've done. I find it also interesting that basically Tanner Janot, they got better in that trade since that trade, and Tampa got worse. But Tampa gave up the farm, so is it a Tanner Janot situation where like they offloaded him? Yeah, we're better, and Tampa received him and was like, yeah, we're worse. So I find that a little bit
Yeah,
fascinating as well.
yeah. I mean, if you're Tampa Bay, Jesus Christ, you're hoping that he pans out, right? Because what they gave up for him was just phenomenal. Like, I know that the Tampa GM came out and tried to justify the reason. That was a massive trade. What, a first, a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, and Cowfoot. So yeah, I just look at that and go, wow, like what the hell are you thinking for a player like Tanner Janot? I don't think he's. I think if they gave a first, that it was potentially too much.
I think it was too
Um,
much personally. The first for Tanner Janot
yeah,
is too much. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And they gave up a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and a former first round pick in Cowfoot,
Mm,
who's obviously not worth first round anymore, but still,
mm.
it's just yeah. I was confused with that. I think yeah,
I think I'll be confused for
that's
that for the
good.
rest of my life. Especially if we
Yeah,
watch the draft tree later on, the trade tree, sorry, and see how all those draft picks worked out, and just I can see it playing out pretty badly in regards to Tampa's side of things. But I guess
100%.
with that said, I guess we should move on to top 16.
Top 16, yeah, and well, to I could have like there was a part of me that almost put these guys below Nashville because I feel like they weren't playing as good as Nashville at the time, but they are the team that snubbed Nashville a playoff spot, so it would have been rude not to. It's the Winnipeg Jets. Um,
Alrighty, that's where I've got them as well.
yeah,
16. It was a very shy 16, honestly.
mm.
Like you said.
They come in clutch though. They come in
Mm,
clutch, right? Like, they almost gave it up, but they got some big wins where they needed to. Beating Minnesota 3-1 with only 20 shots. That was pretty much where they secured it. Um, and yeah, massive for them.
Yeah, it was on a back to back from the Sharks game, which made it more impressive. They beat Sharks as well, and then they took it to Colorado, but didn't get it up against Colorado. they end the season strong. They definitely had a hiccup mid-season, and it does question how good they're going to be. But last 10, they're 6-4-0, so they're above 500. They're plus 22 goal differential. There's a lot to like. They got 46 wins, 36 of them being in regulation though. So what you take into that, I don't know. It's kind of a low mark in 36. The next, like New York Islanders and Florida also had 36 regulation wins, so that's the ballpark where they were playing at. With just all the wild card teams, I'm not sold on them. Obviously they have the Hellebuck factor, but I think they're honestly my one of my favorite teams to get swept in the playoffs, if not my favorite. And
Yeah.
like if a team was in the first round to be swept, I think I'd have my money on Winnipeg. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I think I think we had a chat about this with that Golden Knights versus Winnipeg series where like my money would be on the Jets to get swept over the Knights, but it's one of those things that you could see Hellebuck turning up being absolutely unreal and the Jets sweep the Knights. I don't think it'll happen. And I think it's more likely that the Knights would sweep the Jets. But it's just one of those things with a player like Hellebuck in net, anything's possible.
yeah.
And yeah,
I don't
I'm
think,
interested to see.
like I said, I don't think Winnipeg sweeping the Knights is possible. I don't think that is. I think if Winnipeg do win that series, I think the best score they'll get is a 4-2,
Mhm.
if not a 4-3. So that's what I think the Jets series against the Knights would be. But yeah, I guess
Yeah.
moving on to number 15, I have a team that did not make the playoffs in Buffalo Sabres, but they make my top 16 just because how strong they were. I'm not going to be one of those power rankers that just do the top 16 of the people who made it and then the bottom 16 aren't. This team played like they should have been playing playoffs, just too little too late, really. Sort of on the Vancouver side of things, but they were just playing that much better. Like they beat the Rangers in shootouts this week. They somewhat took it to the New Jersey Devils on a back to back. They did lose 6-2 though. Then their
Mhm.
OT win against Ottawa and beat Columbus. Like the end of the season was just great. They were where was their last 10? 7-2-1. Uh, they were just only -4 in goal differential. They were just a little bit shy. Looked a little bit late, but like I know Tampa's at 19, Buffalo for me, and Buffalo's at 15. Right now, if you put them two together in a series, I'd put my money on Buffalo winning just because how they're playing.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think they've been a strong side. I think we made mention of it before, where they're probably just a couple of pieces away, but they could definitely be an absolute force to be reckoned with next year, or next season. But yeah, I was the same. I couldn't the way Buffalo were playing and had finished the season, I could not push them out of my top 16 just because they didn't make playoffs. Because I think they've been playing better than Winnipeg, who are a playoff side. I think they'd be playing better than Tampa Bay, who are a playoff side. I was very close for them to almost go in front of New York at one point. Um,
I was the same.
but yeah, because that's how I think they've been playing.
Mm,
Yes, too little, too late. They didn't do enough throughout the season, but they miss out on the playoffs by 1 point. 1 point.
mm,
So yeah, I think it was super exciting year for Buffalo, and I think it's only going to get better for them.
yeah.
So all
I
positives for
I
me.
do think they are the team that could do a New Jersey and go from not
Hmm.
making the playoffs to like top 5 in the league next
Hmm.
year if they included the pieces they need to. Um,
Yeah,
clearly they leak way too many goals. So if they include improve that defense and goaltending, then there you go. I think they could become the New Jersey of this year, next year. But
yeah,
they've got to make
100%.
those moves.
100% definitely needs to, but yeah, we'll see what they do. All right, moving on to P14, team we just spoke about, New York Islanders secure a spot in the playoffs, and Bo Horvat is going to the playoffs.
Hmm.
Eh, These guys are an interesting one because they've been pretty solid in playoffs in recent years. They've made Eastern Conference Finals. Their team's not overly that much different to what it was when they made those conference finals. Just probably a little bit older. Um, but yeah, it's definitely a team, especially with Sorokin in net and the defense they've got behind him. Oh, in front of
Yeah, I
him,
was gonna say
sorry.
behind him,
Um,
they're not defending well, but yeah, like, continue.
yeah, I know, right? Um, um, yeah, I think that they're going to be a real terror for the Carolina Hurricanes. And yeah, I think even if they came up against Boston, I think
Mm.
they it would have been a lot tougher. But I do think they're built to cause an upset of with the Carolina Hurricanes. I would not be surprised if the New York Islanders knock the Hurricanes out in the first round.
No, I'm the same. I think they at least take 2 games. It is interesting though that like they're amazing at home, but they're slightly below 500 away, and obviously they don't
Ooh,
have the home ice advantage initially. And if they go to game 7, they'll be away, so they'll obviously have to flip their stat in that regard. Um, but they are probably one of the better defensively sound teams in the league. They didn't have the greatest of weeks. They lose to Washington, but they outplayed them. But then they beat Montreal. So two lower end teams. They go 500. I don't know what to make of it. I think they probably, like I said, one of the better defensive teams, and I think they can coming up with Carolina that sometimes struggles to score. I think they could really play their game, and Carolina might struggle to play not play theirs. So that would be a fascinating series to watch.
yeah, I think it will too. Yeah, I honestly I wouldn't be surprised New York Islanders in six,
Mm. No, I think that if you're going to probably throw an upset out there, I'd probably say the Islanders is probably one of the closest ones for an
one of the
upset
top
there.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. All
Alrighty.
right,
Uh,
moving on.
13 for me. Not moving. Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, same here. No
Yeah.
movement for the first time Stanley Cup playoff team.
Mm. Yeah.
How exciting!
They make the berth. They beat Arizona. Then the rest of the week they lose to Golden Knights twice, and it's not the greatest of things you want to hear is that you're losing to a Western Conference playoff rival twice.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it is what is it. It is they only score two goals, 1 goal in each game against Vegas as well. They are probably, like New York Islanders, probably one of the better defensive teams in the league when their system works. I don't think
hmm
it's been working as strong as it did in the middle of the season, but I really do think it's a top-notch system, and the way they watch, and they got youngsters and Berniers and whatnot that are coming through. Goaltending is an issue. They did go 6-4-0 in their last 10 though, so they have some sort of momentum. They make 100 points on the season, which is another good little milestone for them. Uh, I could see them doing some things in the playoffs. I could see them sweeping. I could also see them not getting swept. It's a fascinating one. This team.
yeah. Coming up against Colorado, I mean, it's a tough one, but you're also coming up against a Colorado that's going to have no Gabriel Landeskog. They've had some other injury issues and concerns throughout the season. So it's definitely a series that it would be a massive upset if they did beat Colorado, but it's probably not as close shut as what some people would think.
Mm,
I think Seattle are definitely in with a shot. I think it's going to be tough because I think Colorado have been one of the best teams in the league in probably the last couple of months. But in saying that, Seattle's defense, if they can get on top of Colorado, and you can get some really solid performances out of their goaltenders, they're definitely in with a shot.
Mm.
But the goaltending is what ultimately concerns me. I
Yeah,
just don't
no.
know if,
Well, neither of the
yeah,
major ones are over 900. Would finish the season over 900 this
yeah,
year. The
that's
interesting thing I did
concerning.
not realize that Grubauer is their highest paid player, 5.9 mil. The rest are all five
Mhm,
and a half or below, and so
mhm,
that shows that you don't need the McDavid or McKinnon or some type of huge contract like that to be a playoff team. You just build a solid
yeah,
team that play a good functional system, filled with they got 5 million players in their forward line. They got 4 million players in their D and one underperforming goalie, but 5.9 mil contracts there. It's That's what makes a team. That's why it's exciting. Is that they're playing the system. They're not playing the players. And that's the difference to some of the other teams. And I think that's why they could sweep Colorado. Honestly, if they play their system for 4 games, or they could even get swept if they don't play their system. That is this team. If they show up, they're going
that's
to
where
show
it's at.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. It would be interesting to see how it gets to them.
Alrighty,
But
12th.
all right, let's move on to 12. Look, this team, you and I definitely have some interest in this team going into the playoffs. The mid-season, I picked these guys to basically make the cup from the West, and you picked the team they'll be playing to make the cup. So we're gonna have a little bit of a bet with this series. But yeah, it's the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, we definitely need to get a Dallas Minnesota Wild jerseys, and then we can play that along. My
Yeah,
Wild
for sure.
are at 11.
Little
Um,
bit up.
-2 for me.
Yeah, you had them a lot higher last week than I did. Um,
Yeah, a lot higher last week. They finished the season average. They beat Chicago, lose the Jets on a back to back, but they outplayed them. Then they lose to Nashville in OT, though it was a 50-50 game, but they probably shouldn't have been. But honestly, they're resting for the season playoffs as well.
mhm.
They've been sitting around this like 9 or 8 to 12 mark for a fair few months now, and it's been kind of where they're at. They still lack full consistency. This team, and that is my worry with this team. Like they end the season 5-3-2. They sometimes can go on a run, but then sometimes like they just lose games that you're just like, what have you done there? And
Mhm.
that's my concern with the Wild.
Yeah, 100%. I think they've got one hell of a goalie tandem. That's one of the things they've
Mm,
probably got working for them. But yeah, it's definitely not going to just happen for them. They've got to pull it together and they've got to play a lot more consistent than they have been. Um, but hey, look, they're in the playoffs. That's the main thing. They come up against Dallas first round. Um, do I think they can beat Dallas? Yeah. I think they've got what it takes. Do I think that it's going to be easy and that either team's going to sweep these series? No. I think this is potentially one of those series that it's going to go to either 6 or 7 games. I'd be very surprised if it didn't.
mm. Yeah, no, that is true. Like Dallas, on the other hand, has been that it's kind of the same boat as Wild. Is can sometimes be very inconsistent, and we're scraping along on those OT wins and losses points. So yeah, I guess
For sure.
my 12, I have got the Florida Panthers. Not moving for me.
Florida Panthers, I think, uh, yeah, they're
You, you
just
you're in the
one above.
you're in top 10 last week.
Yeah, they were, and you know what, I'm still pretty high on them. They've just dropped off one position because of Carolina.
Yeah,
Can't
well
hide that, but
they finished the season not winning the game in the last two. They take Toronto the OT, outperforming them. But this is the thing: Toronto and Carolina, hard teams to verse, but also teams that really weren't playing for anything at this point, um,
mhm.
and basically resting for the playoffs. Meanwhile, this team was basically playing playoff hockey, and
I mean, Carolina were playing for the top spot in the Metro, so I will say that at least.
Yeah, I guess you can say that. I don't think it matters too much for him in the end, but yeah, they were playing for the playoff. But Toronto game, they've been basically the same as Tampa. Really, they know what they were going to be doing. Like you said, this team is hot. This team has turned it on. This team is very threatening. I could definitely see him taking it to Boston, even upsetting Boston, because that
Mhm.
just seems to be the thing that happens in playoffs these days. And yeah, I feel like Boston really do have to do their research and see what this team's doing because they've probably gone under the radar somewhat as well. And it would be harder because obviously Boston probably had their team management would have had to been researching like four teams because they didn't know who was going to finish where in the playoffs. So whereas everybody's probably been watching Boston trying to figure out how do we play like them. So yeah.
Exactly, and I think Florida, from where they've come over the last probably couple of months, to make the playoffs, because there was a period there where you thought they were done and dusted. They've come back to make the playoffs, and they're in some pretty hot form. They've got a side that won the President's Trophy last year, so they've definitely got top-notch hockey in them, and they've got a couple of decent goaltenders. I know Bobrovsky has had his ups and downs, but he got paid $10 million for a reason. Um, so yeah, I don't know. If I'm Boston, I still think y- they should probably win that series easy-ish. I think they should still win it in five or six. I don't think they'll sweep it, but it's definitely a game. It's definitely a team that I worry Boston, if they're not on and they just have a little bit of a slip up, Florida might pounce, especially early. In those first two games, if Florida get a sniff and Boston give it to them, I definitely start to worry just a little bit.
Yeah. I'd say my concern with Florida is their goaltending. Um, Obviously, no Spencer Knight, basically relying on Bobrovsky or Alex Lyon. Bobrovsky's really only showed up once in the playoffs, maybe twice if you want to count 21-22 for the Florida, but it wasn't overly spectacular. The only real spectacular one was with Columbus in 18-19. And then you got Alex Lyon, who stepped in, probably a number one goalie at the moment, with a better save percentage and the way he's been playing, but definitely untested in playoffs. He's never played playoffs. So, yeah, I feel like that's probably where the camel's back breaks, is right there
Yeah, you're not wrong.
already. Moving
All right,
on.
move on to the top 10. Our final top 10 of the year, hey, or season. Um, Moving up one position, they finished off relatively strong, managed to snag that top spot in the Metro, hold on to it. It's Carolina Hurricanes.
Alrighty, I've got them at 9. So moving up 2 for me.
Nice. Like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say about these guys? They've probably been a bit underwhelming to finish the season, considering they finished top of the Metro. Um, but still a stupidly strong side. I I think again the only real qualm we've got with them is probably their goaltending situation and not getting that pure sniper at the deadline. I think that could come back to bite them in the butt. Um, a- and probably even more so because of who they're playing. I think they're gonna really miss having that pure goal scorer coming up against Sorokin and the Islanders. I think they're a team that could shut Carolina's offense down.
Mm,
And Carolina are going to really sort of struggle and have to work hard for their goals. So if they had had that extra goal scorer that we all think they need, um, it probably would have been a bit easier on them. But yeah, I'm definitely worried about these guys in terms of being kicked out first round.
mm. Yeah, it really has been a like 500 or so run to the end of the season. I mean, pitching top spot by a point. They got a strong team. They do lack that scorer. It's honestly scary coming up against a good defensive team with lacking that scoring. Um, they do have some injuries, of course, as well. Like Svechnikov's out, so that is a big loss. And can they make it and push through with that loss? They kind of have to do what Colorado will have to do without Landeskog, maybe. So, um, yeah, like I don't know what to make of this team. Like they lose to Ottawa, they beat Detroit, then they beat Florida, in a good win. But I don't know if this team will be a 500 team in the playoffs, and they get kicked out in the first or second rounds. But I can definitely see it happening, which is strange for how strong they have been throughout the whole entire season. But
Yeah, it's
losing
crazy,
Svechnikov's
right?
huge.
Oh, massive loss for them. But yeah, it is pretty crazy that we're sitting here talking about, potential first round upset for a team that, has probably been one of the strongest in the NHL. It's why they finished second in the league and, first in the Metro. But yeah, it's just one of those things. They lose Sveshnikov. They didn't get the pure goal scorer that they needed at the deadline. So yeah, now you're left with some question marks,
Mm.
and
And they don't really
whether or
have the
not they can.
goaltending to sit on either. That's another thing.
No, exactly right. They're gonna need interesting performances, from their goaltending. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm definitely interested to see how it goes.
Mm.
But hey, all right,
Alrighty. Team not moving
let's
for me
move
at
on.
nut position 10. I got the LA Kings.
Yeah, they don't move for me either, but I had them at 9 last week.
Yeah, they win both their last games, but it was against Vancouver and Anaheim. Um, like the Vancouver game was a good win, 3-0, but I couldn't take too much into what they did this week. It's kind of what happened in this that division is you get to feed off those teams, and the thing is they did. So that is the good hallmark. I think they're one of the better teams. They did go 5-5, just like Carolina at the end. Um, in the last 10, they finished 10th in the league. Very strong season. Probably surprised a few people, and they're good at both home and away. I see them doing things in the playoffs. I don't know how far they push, but honestly, they've done it before in 2012, been underdogs and then come through and win it. So definitely a scary team here. I think one of the better teams in the West and probably more consistent teams in the West throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean they've been up in the top three of the Pacific all year. They've been one of the higher ranked West teams pretty much all year as well. So yeah, consistency definitely. Definitely got my concerns in terms of their defense and their goaltending. However, they've proven to get over that hurdle all year. So yeah, no reason that the playoffs won't be any different. It's gonna be an interesting series against Edmonton. Can they can they survive that firepower of McDavid?
Mm,
That's what it's really gonna come down to. But yeah, should be a absolute cracker of a series. Um,
alrighty.
all
P8.
right, let's move on to P8. Another Western team. And it's the Dallas Stars.
Yes, Dallas
One of
Stars
one
for
of your
me.
favorites.
Yeah, it was my favorite early on in the season to win. Yeah, it's definitely my bet against the Minnesota Wild game. So hopefully I'll win that bet against ourselves. They finished the season strong as well. They win the last three. Granted, not the strongest opponents in Detroit, then St. Louis twice. Um, so definitely not the strongest of opponents to finish off the season. But they were 8-2 in their last 10. They won their last six. They've probably this is probably the biggest momentum they've had all season. Generally, they're just above 500 a lot of the time, and now they've really turned it on. So, and do they continue that momentum into the playoffs? Will be very, very interesting, and I think they can. Robertson had amazing season. I really like the goaltender. situation Ottinger. Like there's a lot of love about this team. Um, it'll be a very disappointment if I don't see him getting past round two, maybe, depending who they line up against.
Yeah, for sure.
Alrighty. Nothing else to say. I'll go P7. It is the Vegas Golden Knights.
Alright, cool. It's interesting call. They haven't moved for you. I had them a little bit higher, and they've moved up just one position for me at P5.
P5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, understandable. Strong team. They didn't lose a game this week. Granted, they faced the same team in Seattle. Um, I feel like it's one of those things it's hard to judge because sometimes you just got the trump over a team.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't take too much into account with that, but it was Seattle, so I definitely took some. I just couldn't really warrant dropping the other teams I have in front. They've had a good last 10, 6-1-3, but I just couldn't warrant it, even though the other teams may have worse last tens, just because I still think the other teams are stronger overall as a squad compared to Vegas.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd probably agree with you on that. Um, but yeah, I think they've got the wins. They deserve the just a little bit of love. I couldn't give them too much because I still have my concerns with them. I think they're a good four. They've got a good overall team. Like they have four lines, three defensive lines. That's one of the things they've got going for them. Um, Question marks around their goaltending, which seems to be a trend. Um, but overall, I don't know how strong they are because they've got four lines, but how good's that first line? Like it's okay, but is it a true first line? Um, their defense, it's just a team that I could see, um, yeah, I could see struggling to get past the first or second round.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I guess onto your pick then.
All right, P7. Just moving down a few spots. I still think these guys are ridiculously strong, but they didn't finish off with the strongest of weeks. So yeah, they've gone down a couple of spots. It's the New York Rangers.
Yeah, warranted. Moving on down. It's the team that I was debating with Vegas pips them or not. In regards to my side of things, and yeah, it was a pretty lackluster week. Granted, pretty hard week. They faced Buffalo, shootout loss. Buffalo was really pushing hard, and then they faced Toronto, only losing by a goal in a really really good game. So yeah, there's honestly they only get 1 out of 4 points, but it was pretty good week in a sense, I still think, and I still think they've probably got one of the better complete teams in this top 10, and they're still really one of my favorites. They come against New Jersey, who hasn't even been spoken of yet, so that's how good that series is going to be. And yeah, look, they got the goaltending. They don't have that goaltending issue that we've talked about it as well. So that's why I've got them at 6.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think they're
Mm.
going to be one of the toughest teams to beat, and it's insane because I also think it's going to come a lot of the series is going to come down to which one of these teams gets through, the Devils or Rangers, because whichever one gets through, I can see winning the next series and going to the conference finals,
Mm.
potentially going even further than that. But yeah, to me, I think it's going to be an absolute cracker game, and I think New York are as geared up as any team for a run at the cup.
Alrighty, team 5 for me, cracking the top 5 is the New Jersey Devils. Just moving
Ooh,
up
yeah,
one position.
absolutely deserve that. 100%. See you on that, but yeah, I've got them just one down at number 6.
Yeah, they finished off the season strong. They beat Buffalo 6-2, and then they beat Washington 5-4 in OT. So strong end. They've broken some franchise records. They've honestly just played an amazing season. They are their own worst enemy. Goaltending. topic we keep bringing up. Iffy with Vanacek. Basically, you got to ride him the whole way or bring in Akira Schmid because I think Blackwood's definitely not the man now, assuming he got pulled in the last game in the first period. Well, he played a minute and 5 seconds into the second period, conceded a goal, then got pulled. Um, so yeah, you got pretty much untested goaltenders here with a really young, really firing, fast-moving squad against a very higher firepower team in Rangers. So definitely had to have him in my five over Rangers, especially on the weeks they've had.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you on that. I think yeah, they've just they've been so fun to watch this year. And it's been an incredible turnaround. I really hope for their sake that they show up. I think that's one of the big things. One of the big question marks is they're inexperienced. They're coming up against an experienced Rangers outfit. Um, off the back of an Eastern Conference berth last year. A fight like Eastern Conference final berth, like that's huge. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Can the young players step up to the plate, and are they going to be ready for it? But yeah, I could see it being an absolute cracking game, and that's what I'm hoping, a series, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Mm.
As long as it's a good series, that's what I want. It goes either way. Rangers win, Devils win.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
long as
yeah.
it's a cracking series, I don't want to see one or other. Like as being a Devils fan, as much as it would be amazing to blank the Rangers 4-0, I don't think that's what the series deserves, and I don't think hockey fans deserve that. I think they deserve to see what we've seen in the series all year, right? I think the Devils are 3-0-1 in the series, but every game's been tight. Like two games have gone to overtime. Um, One of the other games was a goal, 2-1 in regulation. The other game was 5-3 in regulation. They've all been stupidly close, and I hope that that's what we see, and I really do hope that it goes to 7 games because I think it'd be incredible. My heart might not be able to take it, but I think it'll be incredible.
Alrighty, P4 for you.
P4 moving up a position and being as geared up as they've ever been to get out of the first round finally. It's the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, no, that's where I have them as well. Very strong team. I think one of the strongest coming in. I think they're slightly underrated on how strong they are sometimes. Um, and they had amazingly hard week and they beat them all. Florida, Tampa on a back-to-back, and the Rangers. Granted, they're all one-goal games. Florida game went to OT, but seriously strong team. I honestly, weirdly enough, I can't see a world where they don't get out the first round. It's just
Mm,
it's just how I'm seeing it, and I think they've got the balance they need. They're playing the system they got. Everyone's showing up. Mana's playing amazing. Yeah, I can't. I feel like four is really low actually for just how good they play, but it just shows how strong the top three are as well.
yeah, 100%. But yeah, if you're a Leafs fan, I don't want to get your hopes up, but Jesus, yeah, I think this is the year.
Mm.
I'm not saying this is the year you win the cup, but this is the year you finally get out of the playoffs.
I think
The
getting out of the first round
first
is
round.
like winning the cup for them at this point.
Yeah, yeah, I reckon they'll be celebrating like it, that's for sure.
Alrighty. Number three, I have team moving down the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I didn't make that move. I kept them at
Yeah.
number two.
Yeah, no, you've made a lot
I
of
just didn't.
mistakes this week. It's fine.
Oh, big call,
Shots.
big call.
Shots. Um,
Shots fired. Um, Jaden won't be returning next week because he will be in a body bag.
yeah.
Um,
No, they're still a strong team. Have my questions of how they've played as of late. They go 3 out of 4 this week. They beat Anaheim. It went to OT though. They lose in OT to Edmonton, and they got outplayed. Honestly, they um, win against Winnipeg and then beat Nashville on a back-to-back. So a very strong team. They're not blowing out the opponents like they were earlier, But I will say that McKinnon stepped up another level. I feel like he looks like McDavid-esque level at this point. He's stupid, crazily good right now. And I feel like just on him and just like how McDavid carries Edmonton, he could just carry them through. My issue is like how good would their goaltending be? They've proven they don't need a good goaltender to win it, but they don't have a full squad like they did last time. But yeah, like Ransonen's played amazing. McKinnon's hit that another level. Or I honestly can't see a world where they don't make the Eastern Conference Final. But yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think they're still very strong, but yeah, there's a lot of question marks obviously around the likes of Landeskog who's not gonna return. What's the effects that having him not not even a potential come into the lineup, what's that going to do? I've got question marks around that. The fitness of Cal McCarr as well. Obviously, there's some doubts about him. Um, so yeah, look, it's not ideal for Colorado, but they've definitely been one of the hottest teams in the NHL since probably the All-Star break. Hence why I kept them in the number two spot. I think, Edmonton, were all over them parts of that game, but at the end of the day, it was a overtime loss and they conceded a power play goal in overtime.
Mm. Yeah, no, you don't care much. It's OT. It's not.
Yeah,
You're not playing
it's
3v3.
hard to
So
yeah, exactly, and it was hard. So that's what made it hard for me to punish them. So I looked at it and went, well, what are they? 8-1-1 in their last 10. The Oilers are 9-1-0 or 9-0-1 or something in their last 10.
yeah, 9 on
It's
1. They've
hard
won
to
the
sort of
last 9 though.
yeah, and they've been phenomenal. And honestly, if I put them at number two, like you have, it wouldn't really it wouldn't really make much difference. I think both of these teams have been stupidly strong, and either of them at number two or three would have made perfect sense.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I chose not to do it. I didn't think I saw enough from Colorado in terms of falling off to warrant that swap.
Mm. No, I just think Edmonton's been more dominating their opponent compared to Colorado, where they're just edging that win. And there's also the injury bug you got to consider with Colorado compared to Edmonton, which they might only have like a line and a bit or something, but that line and a bit shows up, and doesn't seem to be injury plagued. Besides maybe Evander Kane, so you got that to consider. Edmonton's also just been a different powerhouse since fixing their D with Ekholm. It really is what they needed. And I guess we can move on to your number three, which I'm guessing will be Edmonton.
And it's Boston.
and
Uh,
and now you're kicked
100%.
off and in the body bag.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not even by you. I've just
yeah.
had some random Boston fans rocked up to my door. Um, nah, yeah, it's definitely Edmonton. I think, yeah, I have my questions around them, but and on the 9-game winning streak, it's great. They have fed off a lot of Anaheim, San Jose, teams like that, but you still got to win the games, right?
Mm,
So, yeah, look, they're as geared up as anyone going into playoffs. Got some good momentum, and they've got the probably the best player in the NHL in
oh,
Connor McDavid,
in the world, yeah.
and yeah, and you know probably another one in the top five at least. In Draisaitl. So, they've definitely got the players to do it. It's just going to be a question of can they get enough from the rest of the team to make them really dangerous.
Mm. No,
But
one little stat did want to bring up is like Connor McDavid, amazing season, 64 goals, ends the season with 153 points, but he only ends up the season with plus 22. because 71 of those points were on power play, um, which is basically half, like just under half. And then you go and look at like a Thomas Tatar from New Jersey, only 48 points for the season, but he's a plus 41. like like you're getting plus 19 in goal differential from a player with 66% less points. So
points.
yeah,
Yeah.
that it's insane to think like, what do you consider? But obviously a lot of his points came from power play, which is where they feed.
Yeah.
But
But that just shows you as well, like, what, 70, he had 80 points, 80, even strength points or, potentially on the short-handed as well. But um so he's he's still conceded an absolute bucket load of goals as well. He finds himself on the ice conceding goals as well because 80 even strength goals is still pretty heavy.
mm,
Um, Plus he's potentially on the ice. I mean, it's very odd for him to be on the ice, them to score, and him not to be involved.
mm,
But yeah, like I think that's what concerns me about that plus 22. The amount of points he puts up, even though a lot of them are power plays, he still put up a lot of even strength points,
mm, mm.
which should mean his plus minus would be a lot higher. But it just shows you that he's also conceding goals when he's on the ice.
Yeah. Well, he's
So
obviously doing this thing up forward, and then obviously they've had defensive issues and goaltending issues throughout the season. So that's where those leaks come from. Obviously, it's been somewhat stamped up and duct taped up with Ekholm. And they've definitely been a different
yeah,
team since then. But I guess moving on, Boston number 1.
number one
I guess you
again.
you
How
stamped
boring.
number one favorite to win the cup. Boo hoo, blah blah. Maybe they break the president's trophy curse. I don't know. Best
Well, they've
team.
broken a lot this year.
They're broken a
So
lot of records. Probably one of the best teams to ever watch. Honestly, I'd love to get a video record of just this whole season on DVD or something like that. But
mhm.
yeah, no, I don't even know what to say for this team. They've been resting for probably like two weeks now. Resting quite a lot, and they're still beating everybody, which is just like I'd understand. Like, oh, you're resting your team, you lose to Philly, Washington, and Montreal, and you're like your last 3 games, but they don't. They win. They win all three,
Mhm.
and yeah, no, scary team, scary good. Honestly, for the players that they have there in Bergie and all of that, I hope they do it. Um, because I think that it'd be good for them. They deserve it. They've gone through a lot, taking pay cuts and everything, doing right by the team. So I would like to see if a team other than the team I support to win. I would like to see Boston do it because I hate to see a season like this basically go to waste.
Yeah, that's it, right? Like you don't want to see them go through all of this, break everything they did, and then get kicked out in the first or second round. Um, I mean, if they lose the Stanley Cup, they lose the Stanley Cup. It happens. I at least want to see them make it. As much as that pains me to say, because obviously, supporting who we support, um, it would mean that they definitely aren't going to win the Stanley Cup. But yeah, I would love to see him win it as well. I think Bergie definitely deserves it. He's an absolute top class player. But yeah, I think for their sake, for what they did, it's pretty much a Stanley Cup berth at minimum. Um, because yeah, like that's one hell of a season to wash down the drain if you get kicked out in the first or second rounds.
Yeah, especially if you lose to a wild card position team. Granted, Florida been good, but you have the season you have, and then you lose to a wild card team in the first round. That would I think that would just shatter everyone. I think that shattered the whole NHL. Just like even Florida fans would probably be like, oh,
Yeah,
we just did
yeah, it's
that.
like, oh, what did we do? Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So
no, phenomenal season from Boston. It has to be said. Absolute pleasure to watch. Yeah, just beautiful through and through. They get their goal scoring abilities, their defensive and their goaltending tandem. it's just they were just perfect across all four offensive lines, all three defensive lines, the goalie tandem throughout the year. Any sort of other players who have come in and throughout the team throughout the year, they've just been pretty much perfect.
Mm.
Um,
Well, I was just having a
yeah,
look at
been a pleasure.
my record, and they're first place 20 out of 24 times. The
Hmm.
times they weren't was obviously the first week where you can count that off because there's a very small sample size, but they were third. The lowest they've ever been this season is third. And then there was just the little hiccup weeks that they had where Carolina pipped them, and that that was basically it. It was a 50-50 call basically where you put them down to number two, and you could have made the call not to, and they could have been first basically from the rest of the season. So they've been basically number one since day one, really.
Hmm. Oh, 100%.
Mm,
It's been a phenomenal journey from them. Um, yeah, they haven't been lower than two for me. And really, other than that first week, the only other team to kick them out of their spot has been Carolina. So yeah, it's been incredible.
mm.
And yeah, I do. I'm with you. I hope that they finish it off because it deserves to be finished off.
Alrighty. I guess we can end it there. That's the end of the power rankings for this season. This is where they end up. Some teams in the playoffs not finishing in playoff positions, and vice versa. It's been a roller coaster. Definitely, this rankings is a lot different to the first few weeks that we had, and it's been great. It's been a great journey to be going along. So leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe for more content. We will be covering the playoffs and doing some videos before the playoffs on what our thoughts of the matchups are. So stay tuned for that. And until then, I guess if you want to say any more goodbyes, that'll be it.
It's just been a pleasure, guys. Thanks for supporting us throughout our first year of power rankings. We'll be back next year for another year of power rankings as well. But like as Jaden said, we'll be covering the playoffs. We'll be covering off seasons, the draft sort of things, all that sort of stuff. So keep an eye out for any videos we do drop. But yeah, again, just thanks for all your support in our first sort of season. It's truly appreciated. So yeah, until next time, guys, take care.
Yeah, take care.